Closed captioning of this program is underwritten by AARP of the Virgin Islands.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Good day, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidates Forum, a program produced in collaboration with WTJX-TV for well over 35 years. It is our hope that through these programs, you, the voting public, will have a better understanding of each candidate running for elective office here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We invite you to look at all of our programs for the 2024 election year right here on WTJX-TV, with candidates seeking office as senator in the 36th legislature or as delegates for the Constitutional Convention. For the first time, we're also interviewing candidates for the boards of education and election. Although all the candidates for these positions were invited, not all responded or accepted our invitation. We are delighted, however, to have with us two candidates running for the position in the 36th legislature in the St. Thomas St. John district. I am Pamela Toussaint, a member of the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, and I will be serving as your moderator for today's program. The candidates have been informed in advance of the guidelines of today's program. No candidate had access to the questions in advance. The first responder to each question will be rotated among the participants. Timing of a question will be announced in advance. Any comment directed specifically at a participant by another participant will be followed by a rebuttal of 60 seconds. A 45-second follow-up may be allowed. All are expected, of course, to be respectful of each other. So let's begin. I will first ask each candidate to identify who they are and to state their political affiliation and ballot number. We will, of course, learn more about these candidates as our discussion continues. I'll start first with our candidate. To my immediate right, Senator Fonseca. Can you please state your name, ballot number, and your political affiliation?
Well, pleasant good evening to the listening audience. Pamela, I am your candidate, Ray Fonseca. I am number 11 on the ballot, and I am a Democratic candidate for the 36th legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, name, ballot number, and political affiliation, please.
A pleasant good evening to the listening and viewing audience. My name is Avery Lewis, and I'm number 9 on the ballot. And I am a Democrat, a proud Democrat.
Thank you, and thank you so much for each of the candidates for being here with us. So we'll get started with the first question. So we the general public, would like to know just about your readiness to become or even to remain as a senator in the upcoming 36th legislature. And I'll start, of course, with Mr. Lewis. So this is the two-part question, and you will each be given 90 seconds to answer. The first part, as a candidate for a seat in the 36th legislature, what are your competencies, education, or training that will make you a good choice to address our vexing issues as a senator here in the territory? Second part to the question, please list your recent accomplishments that demonstrates those skills and your readiness for this position. You have 90 seconds to respond.
Great. First, I'm a product of the public school system in the United States Virgin Islands. I spent all my years here. I started out at the Corwin Terrace Elementary School, the Adelaida Cancrine, Charlotte Amalie High School, then I went on to the University of the Virgin Islands to do my bachelor's in elementary education, then I did my master's at Concordia University online in the master's education program. I taught in the public school system And I think this is where my career path really started leading up to today. I taught in the public school system for about 15 years plus. And then I moved on to become the AFT president of the St. Thomas St. John District, Local 1825. Then I became a member of the Central Labor Council and then eventually the president of the Central Labor Council. Then I moved on. I was on various boards to name the Economic Development Authority, Economic Enterprise Zone Commission. Back in the De Young administration, I was the Pension Reform Task Force chairman. Then I moved on recently to my most recent position as the St. Thomas Water administrator. And I think all of this gave me the great opportunity to build some experiences. I got to see both sides of the coin during my years of coming to this point where I was actually before the legislature, see things how things goes.
Thank you. And so we'll turn now to the incumbent senator. And so your part of the question reads, what has been your accomplishments as a senator over the last 2 years that you feel justifies for you being reelected in this upcoming election cycle? And you have 90 seconds to respond.
Well, thank you so kindly, Madam Moderator, Ms. Toussaint, and pleasant good day to all the listening audience, and greetings and warm welcomes and blessings. In the 35th legislature, I'd like to extend a heart warm thank you to all of the voters who have entrusted me with your future. Rest assured, I will take your vote of confidence in me in the 36th legislature seriously as I continue to advocate and shine light on the pressing issues. We have a whole bunch of accomplishments, acts passed. I serve as the chair of the Health, Hospitals, and Human Services Committee. And real quickly to summarize it, because I only have 90 seconds, we were able to approve Act number 8729, which appropriated $700,000 to the Caribbean Kidney Center. As you know, after Hurricane Irma and Maria, we had a whole lot of dialysis patients that had to move to the States. Running along quickly, we were also able to appropriate $2.1 million in Act 8875 to continue to pay for the Stafford nurses.
You can continue, go ahead.
And we have Act 8876, $1 million for the Roy Lester Snyder Hospital to purchase dialysis chairs, Act 8812, Act 8814, Act 8887, a whole lot of accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator, for that. And we'll continue with you, Senator. The next question really looks at your vision for the Virgin Islands. And in 2027, it will actually mark the 100th anniversary of American citizenship for the Virgin Islanders and 110 years since we were purchased from Denmark. What is your vision with respect to self-governance for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and what role do you intend to play, if any? And just to clarify, self-governance does not necessarily mean independence by any means. So you have 60 seconds to respond to that.
Yes, thank you. I'm also a born Savanero, right there in Vesta Gata, and I went to Lockhart School as from 1st to 3rd grade. Then I went to the James Madison School, which is now Edith Williams Schools. I also went to Adelita Conkrine School, and I graduated from Eudora Ken. My family go back to the 1800s. In the Virgin Islands. My mother, my father, my grandparents, all of them are buried here. One of the things I wanted to concentrate on is we have to concentrate on prevention. Because, 500 Virgin Islanders get diagnosed with cancer every year. And it's much easier if you get diagnosed at a stage 1, which means you can probably have surgery, or rather than delaying the diagnosis and getting diagnosed where your prognosis is much worse.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. We'll move on to Mr. Lewis, and I'll repeat the question for you in terms of what your vision is for the Virgin Islands. In 2027 will mark the 100th anniversary of American citizenship for Virgin Islanders and 110 years since purchase from Denmark. What is your vision with respect to self-governance for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and what role do you intend to play as a senator, if any? And you have 60 seconds, to answer that question.
Well, thank you for that question. And again, I'd like to say, as it pertains to where I would like to see the territory to go, right now, I know in the 33rd legislature, they passed a bill for a free trade zone in St. Croix. So I would like to see more trade going on in the economy. I'd like to see us to improve a lot more on our tourism product, more public-private partnerships, create memories. Right now, if we watch the numbers, the GDP, the gross domestic product is trending upwards, and we're doing a good job. But we have to do a lot more better, because if we can't just, the days of sunshine and sea has just kind of temporarily, that's the way to attract the people here. But when they come here, we have to offer those experiences and memories. So I look at it as, 1, increasing our trade zones, 2, increasing our tourism product, that we could start flourishing more. We have a lot of services we offer here in the community. And if we don't have the proper dollars in the community, then we can offer the services.
Thank you for that response. Okay, and I'll continue with Mr. Lewis. Looking at the size of the legislature, there's been a lot of talk over the several years, actually, going back to perhaps more than 10 years, that people have questioned the size of the legislature. And I'll read the question specifically to that. The last census indicated a significant decrease in our population size. I think we went from anywhere from over 120,000 people territory-wide to under 85,000. And just looking at that, what still remains the same is that we still have 15 senators, although our population has decreased. The question is, looking at the size of the population in comparison to the size of the legislature, shouldn't the size of the legislature be appropriated over 10 years, where you can say, well, okay, now that our census has decreased, why haven't we decreased the size of the legislature? So why or why not? What would be your position on that? And you have 60 seconds.
My position on that is not necessarily the size of the legislature. My position would be the quality of the work coming out of the legislature, to make the lives of the people in the Virgin Islands much easier and things more accessible, and make things, right now we're faced with inflation. So we have to try to work on those type of things. So, they put it to a referendum not too long ago, and the people voted to downsize the legislature. I don't know why nobody have took it up as yet to act on it. But the quality of work is what concerns me coming out of the legislature.
But again, looking at the size of the population, do you think that
it's the will of the people? They put it to a referendum. The people voted on it. Now it's time for us to act on it. Then.
Thank you. And Senator Fonseca, same question. Looking at the size of the legislature compared to the number of individuals that live in the territory, should that continue? Why or why not? What's your position on that? You have 60 seconds to respond.
I think it needs to be looked at because, we represent the people, and that's a good point. It's a way to save money and be more efficient. But, I'd like to also remind the community that the Virgin Islands is unique in that we have a unicameral legislature. In all of the states, you have a House of Representatives and you have a Senate. For example, the duties are separate. The House will look at different things like the budget. The Senate would approve nominations, et cetera, and the House of Representatives will be where you can get in contact. Here in the Virgin Islands, we do both jobs. We do the budget, we do all of the nominations. As a matter of fact, we also function as a land use appeal board because we approve all of the leases, all of the government contracts. So there's a lot that's entrusted in the Senate here, being a unicameral functioning as House of Representatives and the Senate.
So since we're on the topic of looking at the legislature as well as the senators, let's look at the accountability. And this question is to the incumbent senator, Senator Fonseca. Many Virgin Islands have raised concerns about the lack of accountability with respect to our elected officials, namely our senators. It has been suggested that perhaps a numbered seating approach might allow for even better accountability. What is your response to this idea of looking at numbered seats and matching it up to accountability for senators? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Yeah, numbered seat is a very good idea. And accountability, at the end of the day, you can only address your own personal accountability. I find the 35th legislature to be a group of hard-working, decent, and honest individuals. And so I don't see any accountability with the legislature. And then, of course, remember, the legislature main role is to review and approve the budget when it comes to the finances. Once the budget is approved, even the allotments is dictated by the director of OMB. So we don't even though we might approve $1 million to a particular program, the legislature doesn't even control if they were going to get one dime out of that $1 million. So accountability is always very important, and the numbered seating is something that we should take to the voters and have them make the final decision.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Lewis, as it relates to numbered seating.
Well, as it pertains to numbered seating, I think that would possibly work. But I think one of the things is that the people have lost so much distrust in the territory that, they feel that they can't trust the politicians. And, the issues remain the same, but the politicians change. We thought that we have billions of dollars in the community, but the people, when you walk around the community and you talk to people, they'll be like, you don't do nothing for me, but, things are actually happening, but it's probably not happening in their neighborhood or directly to them. But people are so disgusted with some of the empty promises, and we could sit down here, we could list issues that I think that, people thought that there were going to be, a rainfall of new roads. And by now, we just had a hurricane, new asphalt. I picked it up to the paper. I saw where someone was complaining about the Envision program, 7 years after the storm. So I think the distrust, we have to bring back that trust in the community. And it's just a long road.
Thank you for that response. And I'm glad you brought up the whole issue of distrust. But I think we need to look at, and that's evident in what you're hearing around town in terms of people disheartened, specifically when it comes to voting in this upcoming election cycle. So, the League of Women Voters, we've been actually just shocked and dismayed to hear many of the citizens saying, I'm just not voting this year. There's been a lot of empty promises. There's been things that we've been asking for years, but again, addressing the high cost of food is an issue. Addressing the reliability or lack thereof when it comes to electricity, specifically WAPA, the escalating number of folks that we're losing as it relates to crime. There's a lot of challenges here in the territory. So what can you tell citizens about voting in this election cycle? Why should they vote? And Mr. Lewis, that question is to you first, and you have 60 seconds.
Ms. Toussaint, why should the people vote? Because one, it's our right, and it's our civic duty. And not just to go vote and nothing happens, but when you don't go vote, a small set of people make decisions for the mass. And that's where the issues comes in. I want to encourage people to go out there and not just go out and vote, but after you vote in, there's another part to it. You have to start calling your elected officials and keeping their feet to the fire. Because during this month, leading up to November 5th, you're going to hear a lot of promises. And this senator here don't plan to make promises that he can't keep. I plan to deliver on my promises.
Senator Fonseca, what about you? What's your position on that? Why should we go out and vote in November?
Well, it's your civic duty. And remember, if you don't vote, then you basically nullify your duty to elect the best officials. The promises is something that you go in and you want to do the best you can, and you have a plan. But once you get in the legislature is a deliberative body. It takes 8 votes to accomplish anything. And I'm one of the senators have been able to accomplish so many acts, so many legislation. As a matter of fact, all of my acts and legislations, all 15 senators have voted for them. That's incredible. All 15 senators has voted for all of my acts. You see, you have to be able to compromise, but never compromise your integrity. Because remember, you must have that impeccable integrity to do the people's job.
Thank you. And trust and believe, there's a lot of important questions, but as you can see, it's just a 60-minute program that doesn't allow us to discuss as much as we can. But one of the things that we will say is that Virgin Islanders, when surveyed, we actually wanted to find out from them, what are your top major concerns? And there were 4 areas that they let us to know. First, of course, they looked at education and the education system in the territory. Crime, prevention and awareness on that, health. And lastly, they talked about the affordability of our utility and the reliability. And that's the thing that we kept hearing over and over from citizens in the Virgin Islands. What are we going to do as it relates to WAPA? And while we will have an opportunity to ask you several questions as it relates to those top 4 concerns, each one of you will have an opportunity to answer questions specifically to the WAPA concern that many has brought up here in the territory. And I'll start with the incumbent senator, Senator Fonseca. What do you see as the major challenges for WAPA, and what would be your strategy for addressing them as a senator in the upcoming 36th legislature? You have 90 seconds to respond.
Yeah, WAPA was run as a criminal organization here in the territory. I've been a senator now going on 2 years. I have never received 1 page of the vital contract. WAPA was run as a criminal organization. It's terrible. I keep telling people all the time, if you run in a business and it has the highest cost and the worst service, that business would go out of business. WAPA is failed. The AMI, the automated metering system, is a failure. The customer service is bad. However, right, I believe there's hope. And with the battery system and going green, WAPA has they have about a 43 megawatt capacity. They need to have battery backup so that they can run on battery for at least 6 hours so they can get the stuff fixed while we're on battery. WAPA also needs to explore the solar. There's so much problems with WAPA. We have pumped so much money into them, and there's always some surprise. Right now they want us to prepare our food for a whole week. So what happens if we put it in the refrigerator and it goes bad? They want us to hang our clothes on the line. WAPA is an inefficient organization.
Okay, so Senator, again, let me go back to the question. So what specific strategy would you propose in the 36th legislature?
The specific strategy is the battery backup. Right now, they only have 9 megawatt capability for about 1.5 hours. They need to have a 43 megawatt capability so that they can run for at least 8 hours on battery backup. And they're far away from that. And then the other major thing is WAPA, even though they have the new Wärtsilä generators are going to go online, their transmission system is terrible. Feeder 13 right in front of First Bank. Okay, they would dig in, WAPA was digging to repair a water line, and they bust the main feed at 13. So they did not even have as-built to let them know where the main transmission line is. They bust it. It has a lot of problem, but we need to go to battery backup, and we need to also go to the propane. We're not even using the propane. We're still using diesel. We spent over $250 million to build that propane tank. We're not even in that. I could talk for hours on the problems with WAPA, but they have to go to battery. That's the solution. They have to go to battery and the solar. We have a lot
Okay.
of solar.
Well, thank you for that response. So, Mr. Lewis, I'll pose a question to you as it relates to WAPA, a different question, but still relative to WAPA. There,
I would like an opportunity to answer that question, but go ahead.
well, go ahead. You can, if you want to respond to the senators.
I would say, as a legislature, I think it's prudent for me going in to bring in WAPA to find out what's working and what's not working. As it pertains to WAPA, we just can't sit down outside and just look at it and say, well, because WAPA, this is going on. I'm 48 years old, WAPA having issues longer than me. But one of the things I propose to do is, one, we have to fix this egregious billing. One, we have to fix the aging infrastructure. So as legislators, I have to bring them before me to see how we could work together to get this thing accomplished. We have to start looking into burying the lines there. We're in a zone where it's hurricane, earthquakes. So we have to start hardening our infrastructure and, do the things. We see millions and billions of dollars going to WAPA, but we need to make sure it's spent correctly and effectively.
Thank you so much for that response.
Rebuttal.
You have 45 seconds to respond.
I understand what, Avery is saying. However, we've brought WAPA before the legislature. They're constantly before the legislature. Like I told you, the Vital contract, they have never provided us with that information. Right now, the legislature is in a fight with the administration. Avery Lewis is the one who gives the whole community the updates on WAPA. He is the WAPA man. Right now, the board, we are in court with the governor over the board, the construction of the board of WAPA, to make sure that the people on the board of WAPA are qualified. WAPA has come before the legislature all the time. They do not provide the documentation. They are not accountable. There's been 3 different administrations in WAPA in the last 5 years. They come before the legislature, they don't provide you that information.
So just a follow-up to that, what about privatization? I mean, that has been a concept that has been floating around for many years as it relates to WAPA. So I will jump back to Mr. Lewis. What would be your position about privatizing WAPA, considering some of the challenges that we all have experienced and some which you actually brought up?
Ms. Toussaint,
And you have 90 seconds to respond to that.
from where I sit right now, I'm not in favor of privatizing our electricity and water company. I think we have qualified Virgin Islanders working in WAPA that could help turn this plant around. As a legislator, I think my job is to provide resources and provide resources that these people could do their job effectively, and that by them doing their job effectively and coming up with the ideas and so forth. And of course, we're going to have to bring in some consultants and everything to work along with the team. But I think we have qualified Virgin Islanders to make the shift that we need for reliable and efficient power in the WAPA plant.
Senator Fonseca, do you want to chime in as to what's your insight on that, considering that you've been in the Senate now for the past 2 years, and WAPA has consistently been coming to the body. So I'll give you an opportunity to respond in terms of your position as it relates to privatizing WAPA, and you have 90 seconds to respond.
I agree that the current director, the boss in charge of WAPA, I really like him. I've found that he brings a lot of transparency. As a matter of fact, we toured the WAPA facility the other day. That has never happened. As a matter of fact, the current director has told the legislature that part of the problem is that some machines never had a comprehensive overhaul for 10 years. And he comes to the legislature and he says, listen, the transmission system, right now, the main problem with WAPA is the distribution lines. Once the Wärtsilä generators goes online, and of course, we're talking about St. Thomas, St. Croix, problem is not as severe. But WAPA also needed to put the main lines on the ground. But hence, we have an underlying feeder 13 was on the line on the waterfront, and they were digging and still busted. So even though that line was on the ground, WAPA bust their own line. So there's communication that needs to be, but I think that the current chief of WAPA, I think that I would give him a good grade and continue to give the resources. The legislature gives you the resources. They came to us last year, asked for $150 million to pay off the Vital contract. We facilitated the $150 million. The Vital contract is now history. One of the biggest obstacles for WAPA is now history. The Vital deal, we now own the plant.
Thank you. So we're going to shift away from WAPA because we all know a lot of citizens, including myself and including you as well, have concerns as it relates to WAPA and the many challenges that we've experienced for the last, this year in particular. So I'm going to shift now to a question that was actually furnished by AARP of the Virgin Islands. And the question reads, in a recent survey commissioned by AARP, they found that many families here in the territory are suffering from being caregivers, whether it's for their aging family members or aged family members, resulting in the alarming draining of their own personal resources. Many say they will support those candidates who have solutions to assist family caregivers. What do you see as a possibility as a legislature to help our family caregivers? And I will send that question back to Mr. Lewis.
Mr. San, thank you for that question, because that question is close and dear to my heart. You know, as the administrator, I went to the Celestino White Building and I saw a lot of people, individuals, seniors, a vulnerable population over there with no help, because that's a standalone center. That's not assistive living. But when we have other issues where that family members just can't provide that care for their family member who's sick or disabled or whatever the need may be. But as a legislator, I need to sit closely with the Department of Human Services and let's see how we could utilize these funding where we have a lot better. And we need to tap into a lot more of the federal resources to assist family members to pay for care. Now, I'll tell you this, I believe in a portion of this should be a lot more privatized, where we have private companies coming in and having people go to their homes to assist families with these type of things. And not only that, sometimes we may just have to look at it because you have disabled people, people with issues, whatever ailments they have, severities, and they're in these homes, and caretakers. We have to not just put people in there because they need a job, people that's going to help people take care of their family members with love. They have to show that love to take care of these people going in these homes, and it's not just a paycheck. And we have to provide not just, say, a caretaker, but some people just don't have the medical assistance as well. So we have to provide that there too.
Sure. Senator Fonseca, in your position, especially being the chair of Health and Human Services, I know you've been contended with this question as well. What do you see as some possible solutions to help our family caregivers? And you have 30 seconds to respond.
Yes, very important question. And I'd like to say thank you to all of the caregivers, because we know that you do an awesome job. You know, just to give you some statistics, right? In our community, we have 18,641 persons over the age of 65. So what we need is more elderly homes. We need those elderly communities like the Celestino White, the Herbert Grigg. Since the hurricanes at Herbert Grigg in St. Croix, we've lost units. At Lucinda Millen, we've lost units. Queen Louise, we've lost units. We're going to use some of the Epstein funds to purchase Seaview, and that would add back 25 more elderly units. We need to add more units so that the caregivers have that facility to take their elderly.
Great.
Could I rebut with this?
Sure, you have 45 seconds.
I appreciate to hear the good senator talked about having more units and more facilities. But the one thing I didn't hear him say today is building these facilities without assistive living care and rehabilitation centers is useless. We need to build facilities and have assistive living care for these individuals in there, not just put them in and turn our backs. And a lot of this needs to be privatized.
Thank you for that.
Funded by special federal funds.
Well, that's what I said, assisted living and independent living. So I'm sorry my colleague didn't hear me, but I did say Lucinda Millen and the Celestino, and they are examples of assisted and independent living.
Thank you. I know many of our caregivers will be happy to hear the positions that you've stated on that. Well, we have reached the final mark of tonight's event. But what I would like to do now, and each of the candidates will have 60 seconds to respond. We mentioned earlier that there were 4 major concerns from Virgin Islanders. They mentioned crime, education, health, and of course, WAPA. So I would like to ask you, among those, address specifically one of those areas that you would like to touch on if elected or even re-elected in the upcoming legislature. And something that of course is of great interest to you and what strategy you would employ. And again, I will shift that question to Senator Fonseca. You have 60 seconds to respond.
Okay, education, crime, health. I'm going to pick health, right? In the health industry, right, there's awesome days ahead. We just finished last year, June, we opened the Wang Louis Modular Unit, a $174 million facility. That has been the largest project ever constructed in the Virgin Islands. Right now, we're doing the Charlotte Kinnamon Cancer Center here in Roy Lester Snyder Hospital. That's a $50 million project. We just received approval, FEMA approval, to replace the entire Roy Lester Snyder Hospital. That's an $800 million project. But right now, we need to continue to raise the salaries and hire more nurses. We need to be where we are at the state of the art, because right now on St. Croix, they have a 64-slice CT scan, the same as Cleveland Clinic. We need to have the physicians and the healthcare specialists now. We need to concentrate on those.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you for that response. Mr. Lewis, same question. Looking at the 4 major issues, we talked about WAPA, of course, but there's always health. That's a challenge for many Virgin Islanders, education, as well as crime. What strategies would you employ to tackle some of these challenges in those respective areas?
Thank you for that question. 1, I would pick education. That's close and dear to my heart. That's where my career is at. And I went to the administrator's position. But 1, as a legislator, I see that this current administration made some strides thanks to the 36th legislature and everybody who was involved to balancing the budget. So they were able this year to move forward to bring the teachers up to a starting salary of $50,000. But one thing we need to do is we need to start putting things in place that we could retain teachers here. Because other places are advertising and we are losing teachers. Every profession in the Virgin Islands starts with a teacher. We have great teachers in the Virgin Islands, but we're losing them. Why? Because we're not taking care of them. So we need to put things in place, but we need to sit down with GRS who have land and so forth and start having the tough conversations. Well, listen, let's divide this land and start making it affordable for the teachers.
Thank you, sir. Since we're on the issue of education, we mentioned education, but I also realized that none of the candidates touched on, or wanted to touch perhaps, on the issue of crime. So I'm going to see how we can kind of balance the act between education and crime, specifically looking at the accountability of our teachers and our administrators in education as it relates to protecting our young people. So I'll pose that question to you first, Senator. So sexual assault against our children is of great concern here in the territory. Disclosure of these assaults, especially those, recently with, schoolboys by teachers, has been quite shocking, and the community simply is outraged. How can you as a senator protect our young men and women, especially when it comes to accountability on the parts of adults? And you have 60 seconds to respond to that question.
Yeah, that touched my heart. As a parent, right, I raised 4 boys here in St. Thomas. None of them have ever been arrested, charged, or anything. They all went to college. The parents have a major responsibility in raising the child. The education system gives the professional setting, but the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic, have to start with the home. You know, my father didn't know how to read and write, but he made sure that my aunt taught me. You know, the crime, right? You see the videos, you know. What alarms me now is the amount of girls that are fighting. You know, it seems like there's equal girls in those videos fighting. You know, the Bureau of Corrections numbers, and this is startling, says that we have 394 total prisoners and inmates, 394. So we have to do a better job of training our youths with behavioral issues. Behavior issues and anger management got to be curriculum in the schools.
Well, while I do appreciate the fact that you're saying that, you know, it honestly does take, it starts from home as well, but it takes a village to raise a child. And, you know, you as a parent, and you mentioned you had, children, you entrust your children to the care of their teachers. So again, going back to the question, the accountability on the part of the adults to protect our young people. What would you propose as the senator? And I will give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
Okay, first of all, we have to have more participation in the parents-teachers meetings. You know, the teachers always mention to me that the parents-teachers meetings are not well attended. So it shows, you know, that there's a fall down there. But also there's those kids that are at risk, those that are missing classes. Okay, you need to go to that home. You know, those that are, you know, have behavioral issues, you need to go to that home. The education department needs to visit the home and find out why that child is not coming to school and why they're having behavioral issues. Because, like I said, education starts at the home. You get the professional instructions from the teachers, but it starts at home.
Thank you for that. Same question to you, Mr. Lewis, as it pertains to the accountability of the part of the adults in protecting our young men and women in school.
Ms. Toussaint, let me answer that by saying... You have 30 seconds. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Let me answer that by saying, as a former educator, I'm going to take it down real quick. I want to say this. I think, as a legislator, I plan to amend laws that's on the books that, you know, really penalizes these people for these different egregious acts on our children. But as we get into the school system, we have to start holding people accountable. I think it basically portions on reporting. Because when you see these things happen, you have to report it to the proper authorities so the proper actions could be taken. We have to bring in the department, the AFT, the EAA, all the different unions, all the stakeholders to the table. Because we have to put some reporting procedures and policies in place that when we see things, not only things happening in the school, you know. When I was in the classroom, I see children come to school with different abuse and different things. You see the signs as an educator, so you have to take the necessary step and be their advocate and voice their concerns to the proper authority. Not just turn a blind eye, okay, come school today, he drag, he this and that. There's things happening. Some of these children can't sleep at night because abuse going on in the house. It's not just physical abuse, it's mental abuse and emotional abuse. And not just for our children. I want to step it up and say for our other vulnerable population, our elders. When our caretakers see abuse happening, report it, whether it's financially, emotionally, or mentally, report it. I am not going to stand for that.
Mr. Lewis, thank you. Thank you. I see you're very passionate about that. So again, like I mentioned earlier, we're almost to the closing, and now I will ask each candidate, you have 60 seconds for a closing statement, starting first with your name, and I will start with Senator Fonseca.
Yes, and yes, thank you. I'm your humble servant, Senator Fonseca. I'm number 11 on the ballot, Democrat. And, you know, I'm accountable, I'm transparent, and I'm available. You know, we see our constituents every day to the greatest extent possible. You know, I come with an extensive background in the government. I've served as the Chief Executive Officer from the Housing Authority. I started out my career as an accountant, rose all the way up to become the Chief Executive Officer of the Virgin Islands Housing Authority. I spent all of my career in the Virgin Islands. Was born here, raised here, never left the Virgin Islands. I did complete my master's degree at the University of the Virgin Islands. But I want to address one quick thing, is the high cost of living and also our labor market. We have to increase the hourly wages so that we can encourage the employees to get back into the job market, those that are underemployed and unemployed. So we have to address all of those issues, and we have some acts, some bills and legislation to address all of those in the 35th, and we ask you for your vote of consideration. Ray Fonseca, number 11.
Thank you. So we have a little bit more time left in this event. So I want to ask the question about housing. And I'm going to pose it to Mr. Lewis. You'll have 60 seconds to respond to this. Many young families are actually leaving the territory because they simply cannot afford the housing market here, or even affordable rent. What is your position on rent control? Perhaps even some of the suggestions as a possibility of addressing the lack of affordable housing in the territory. And you have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, Mr. San, I feel the pain of the people, even trying to own a piece of the Virgin Islands, because right now the market is just so egregious with the pricing of what's going on, even to own your own home or to rent. I know this problem came about during the times of COVID, when people was coming in here and everybody started turning their places into these Airbnbs and so forth. So these places got egregious, so that they never took into consideration. But I think we as a government, we really need to start sitting with our Virgin Islands Housing Authority and Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority to see where we're going to get a lot of these different projects up and running. I've been to several groundbreaking ceremonies, and all we did was just put in infrastructure. Like we've been to Wild Pineapple down in Fort Tuna. We have some homes building across from Carswell and St. Thomas. But we need to start sitting down with these individuals and finding out when these things will be coming online so they could be available to our people of the Virgin Islands. I see the Dunu project above has restarted. That, we had a problem with the contractor there, abandoned issue. So therefore, we have to get back to these projects to make sure they get online so people could be offered these things.
Thank you for that response. Senator Fonseca, your response as it relates to possibly rent control here in the territory. How do you think that that's going to address the issue of affordable housing? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Rent control or home ownership? You see, and thank you for that question. That's very important. You see, home ownership involves the banks. The banks, them, are not lending to our community at the rate that they used to lend. The prices are going up. Also, the GERS. The GERS used to provide automatic land loans and refinancing loan. That no longer happens. We need to get the GERS back to giving loans. So I was a co-sponsor of Act number 8822 to authorize the GERS system to resume the personal loan program. And they resumed it in this year, and in 6 months, they've given out an additional $20 million to local Virgin Islanders, government employees. We need a lot more of that. Right now, there's the Land to Own program where you can get a grant of up to $250,000. They have a lot of things that's going on, but the publicity needs to be improved so that our residents can know that there are these opportunities available.
You want to rebut?
I would like to
you
add
have 45.
Rebut to that.
45 seconds.
One of the things I think as a legislature we need to do is sit down with start having some tough conversation with our federal partners to increase a lot of the income thresholds. Because even people who are making good money, who have families and things, and the number of family members and things, they're not meeting the qualifications. And then the market here in the Virgin Islands is so expensive. I mean, St. Thomas is skyrocketing. St. John, let's not so worry about that one. St. Croix might be a little more affordable. But we really need to sit with our federal partners, increasing the number, the salary ranges and these thresholds and so forth. Then we have some different programs. Right now we have Own a Lot, Build a Home. We have the slice programs and everything. You know, the problem I have with the slice program is that they have so many different layers to it that it starts to discourage people as well.
So while we're on the issue of, we're talking about housing, and then housing inventory is a challenge, of course. And let's back it up to just looking at the use of our land, or the limited land space that we have in the territory. As you know, this would perhaps be the first time in 30 years or so, we may be finally getting close to having a real land and water use plan, thanks to the hard work of our folks at the DPNR division. What do you see as the next step in activating the plan that would involve the legislature? 60 seconds to respond. And Mr. Lewis, you want to go ahead and take that question? And then I will send it over to you, Senator.
Well, the plan, I think the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, they started out good with the different charades they had and involving the public for their input. Now, as I come to the legislature, I know that we really need to sit down. My colleagues and I would really need to sit down and vet this plan properly, because this is going to benefit the people of the Virgin Islands. And then I know it's going to have to go away to get approved. So when it comes back, hopefully, we'll have a doable and a workable plan that helps all of us in the community.
Thank you for that. Fonseca?
Yes, and I have to also thank you for that question. It's very good. The land use plan that is being working on by Commissioner Oria, great. But, I want to mention that the plan that the governor had, right, to take your homes, and put them into receivership if there was declared a health hazard or dilapidated and stuff, that was dead on arrival in the legislature. We're not going to allow anybody to take your home and demolish it and then rebuild that place and give you a bill and you ain't going to be able to afford it. So that plan by the governor was dead on arrival. But we need to also look at the zonings, right? And that's part of the duties of the legislature. Just this week alone, we had 4 different zonings, 2 on St. John. There's a lot more that we need to do to provide subsidies. When my mother bought the house in Bovoni, it was very cheap. The government has to provide subsidies to our residents so that they can afford the home. And then it becomes a grant. You convert it to a grant, and the government will get revenue because they'll get the property taxes roll increase. So we need to provide more subsidies to our residents so that they can have a piece of the rock.
Sure. And I'm glad you brought up the whole thing with the economy as well, because that's one of the areas that we really didn't get to dive into much. And I will ask you the question, Senator, just kind of keeping along the lines of looking at the economy, because, home building, land and water use, and just, the right mix of businesses within the territory and personal home ownership adds to the whole thing about, the development of these islands. But specifically to the economic development, here, while tourism, as we know, is the backbone of our economy, the majority of electorate, however, don't work in the industry. Many actually work in the government sector, which does little to bring in new dollars. So what's left is really the private sector. What have you done? I mean, like I said, you're an incumbent. If re-elected in this case, to grow and support the private sector and to encourage more locals to become successful in the private sector. And you have 30 seconds to respond to that.
Yeah, the economy, part of our problem, and the 35th legislature, we're looking at that money transfer. Here's part of the problem with our economy. Right now, we're building that hotel on Waiko Dock, $20 million. The cancer center, $50 million. The daycare center out of Bolonga, that's $4.4. $70 million is being spent right now in St. Thomas, and it's all going to be finished within a year. Our problem is we have workers that get paid in cash, and come Friday, whoosh, That money leaves here. The money needs to circulate, turn around in our economy. Now, I'm not picking on any particular group because I know you have family off island and you need to support the family. But right now, the Virgin Islands is supporting the whole of the Caribbean, and the money is not turning around. Those same people are getting the Medicaid benefit, even though a construction worker might get $1,500 a week. Whoosh!
Thank you for
the
that.
money gone
but
out.
I do want to give Mr. Lewis the opportunity to chime in when it comes to encouraging locals to become more successful in the private sector. So you have 30 seconds to respond to that, and then we'll move to our closing statement.
Mr. San, thank you for that. But as a legislator, I think that it's our job to make sure that the businesses feel secure. One, we have to make sure that we have reliable and efficient power in the community. WAPA has killed a lot of the businesses, right? Next thing we need to do, we have to start giving them some small grant incentives to continue to go along. We have all these things. Within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be putting about $15 to $20 billion out in the territory in Rebuild VI. We need to put laws on the books that our Virgin Islander small businesses and vendors here are able to tap into those resources.
Thank you so much for that. And wow, we're down to the closing now. What I'm going to do now is ask each of the candidates, you'll have 60 seconds each for a closing statement. And we'll first start with your name. Mr. Lewis, you want to go ahead?
Well, I'd like to say thank you today, for this opportunity from the League of Women Voters. This is a much anticipated forum everybody look forward to. But I just want to let the people know, voting for number 9, Avery Lewis, is a vote for strong leadership and someone who really and truly understands the plan, the issues and the ailments of this community. I plan to continue to be visible, accessible, and work hard for the people of the Virgin Islands. Again, number 9 on the ballot, Avery Lewis.
Thank you. And Senator Fonseca, your closing statement.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Toussaint. And, I also would like to express my gratitude to the people of the Virgin Islands for entrusting me with your confidence and the future of the Virgin Islands. I am a senator that is accessible, transparent, and accountable, and I have the experience to manage the VI government at the highest level. I have over 20 years experience managing the VI government at the chief senior executive level, and I'm capable and experienced. But I also want to let the community know that we need more love in the community. We have to look at the issues of crimes. There's some of the issues. WAPA is the third leading cause of why businesses fail. You need to have reliable power. So there's a lot more to do. And I ask for your continued vote of confidence to re-elect Fonseca number 11 on your ballot, and blessings, and have a pleasant good evening to all the listening audience. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you to our viewers as well, and of course to the staff of WTJX. Thank you for today's program. The League of Women Voters hopes that this program has helped with you, the voter, in understanding of the candidates, and in doing so, inform your vote in November. Thank you for watching. I am Pamela Toussaint for the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, saying vote early or vote in November. Just vote.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Closed captioning for this program was underwritten by